So if you're curious on ways that you can alchemize psychic burden, oppression that you experience in your everyday life as a Black or brown woman into power, then this video is for you. Hi, I'm Brittany Rochelle. I'm an anger alchemist teaching you how to alchemize rage to live a magnificently melanated life. And today I'm talking all about how to alchemize oppression, psychic burden, microaggressions, being gaslit into power. This amazing community organizer named Esteban Kelly talked so beautifully around an experience that I think so many of us, those who are Black and brown women or women identifying, have the experience of really being in spaces, even in those with seemingly well-meaning people of the dominant caste. And even in these spaces, the systems of oppression, colonial powers, things like white supremacy, things like sexism, things like homophobia are still seeped into even the most well-meaning of spaces. And in my own life and in my own personal development work, it's amazing how much you see even these well-meaning white people can still often recreate the structures of white supremacy in the programs and in the experiences that they cultivate and then want to encourage people of color to join. So especially as Black and brown women experiencing things like fetishization, being hyper or hyposexualized, and just having the experience of being erased, being gaslit, and experiencing microaggressions from the very people who claim to be allies or to stand with your community can be one of the most frustrating, enraging things. And what I get to do as an anger alchemist is to go into these experiences and learn how to alchemize and transform all of those experiences into our own personal, unstoppable power. And going through this process, I definitely invite you to fine tune it, personalize it, but try it on for size and to actually dive into some of the lived experiences that you have in your melanated bodies that are often things that our white colleagues cannot even begin to understand, much less help guide us through. So let's dive into this 5-step process. Number 1, and probably the most important, is to recognize that your feelings are valid. So often just being in these spaces and growing up in a colonized world where we see our own experiences or our own kind of double consciousness or things that rub us the wrong way, we're often told by others, and then we start to internalize that to, you're taking that too seriously, or don't think about it too hard, or you're too sensitive, or they didn't really mean it like that. And we have this way of getting belittled and then belittling ourselves and gaslighting ourselves from our own experiences, even if something that to others might seem small. If it seems like a big deal to you, for me, I had this experience with like conscious white people using the N-word, and people were like, oh, well, they didn't really mean it, and we all make mistakes, and we're still learning. And regardless of like what other people think, if it's a big deal to you, then validate and hold space for yourself that this is a big freaking deal, and allow yourself that time and that space to actually have whatever feelings that you have. In my experience and in working with clients, it's when we try to repress or deny our emotions that they actually become toxic and fundamentally disempowering for us. And number 2 is to remove yourself whenever possible. And I fully understand, especially at corporate job, that you need to pay your mortgage or to pay your rent. It's not always possible to remove yourself. But finding ways and areas where you can be incredibly helpful, at least for a little while, to give you time to alchemize and to really stabilize and to transform on your own end before you re-engage with these people. And even if you're not able to physically or virtually remove yourself from the spaces, it can be really powerful to get into energetic work and practice energetically really setting up boundaries and even like a really strong impenetrable force field around these people. And this can be even the well-known sense of being shut down or appearing shut down to others as an act of love and as an act of protection for yourself and for your own mental and emotional well-being, dealing with people who you know and have been shown do not have your mental wellness or even your well-being in mind. And number 3 is to figure out how you can care for yourself. I have a lot of videos on different ways that you can do this, and a lot of this is using visualizations, going internally, creating your own practices and rituals that you do over and over again. And that's kind of the goal, is you do them so often that they can become your go-to practices when things like this happen. And so really connecting in with, if it's a certain person or a group of people or an object or a piece of art or a song or a dance or something that really is supportive and nourishing for you, I invite you to go to that. And it's even better if you have that be a somatic resource, because then you can always have access to it. If you don't know what I mean by that, feel free to check out some of my other videos that are all about creating your own internal resources, which I have linked below. And if you love this content and you're liking this multi-step process, I invite you to check out my totally free ebook, which is called Melanin, a Reclamation, where I share more of my own personal story and give you more somatic tools of how you can alchemize your own challenging emotions into power. Step 4 is to get clear and identify your values. One of the greatest gifts of grief for me has been this deep clarity. And oftentimes it's through some of the most challenging, adverse situations, which people of color should not have to continue to be in. But when we find ourselves in those situations, being able to use that as almost a sounding board or as a filter, and the things that really matter, the things that you really care about, often are the ones that get sifted out. And when we identify what we value the most, then that can give us the real guidance as to what to go towards next. And it can really guide us in how to deal with these people or this challenging situation that you may still find yourself in. And it can also become a mentor or a guide that can really help you and steer you towards what's going to be most effective and most meaningful for you. And you do that through finding and identifying your values. For example, through my own experiences and super white dominated healing or personal development spaces, one of my biggest areas of challenge has been not seeing any content that was really created for Black or brown people, or any content that even recognizes the intersectionality between racism and sexism and homophobia, and those who really live at the intersection of all of those. And so that really was my guide in terms of the kind of videos that I make, in terms of the kind of clients that I want to work with, and the way that I desire to steer my life. In step 5, I invite you to choose how, when, if, and when you choose to engage with these people or these specific situations. And so much of this can be very empowering to come up with your own language. You can practice with a friend, or you can get in one-on-one coaching with me, and we can come up with these really powerful curated lines that you can have as your go-to to communicate what you are and are not available for, to get practice in setting boundaries in the way that you choose to show up with certain people, and really having this become a somatic practice where you hold yourself in power and in a state of being incredibly self-possessed as you communicate what your boundaries are and the way that you will show up in whatever challenging situation. Overall, I believe that it truly is possible to find power even in disempowering situations and even in oppression. And some of my greatest mentors in being an anger alchemist have been the Black women of the civil rights movement in the United States, and even people like Czech leader Václav Havel, who wrote this incredible book called The Power of the Powerless. And this is really showing us that even when we are in situations and really live in a world that systemically disempowers us in so many ways, it is possible for us to claim and cultivate our own power outside of the larger structures that are in play in our lives. So I hope this video was helpful for you. I really encourage you to try on this 5-step process the next time you're in a challenging situation, or send it to a friend who could really benefit from it. If you want to get even more content, I invite you to check out my free ebook, Melanin: A Reclamation, and check out more of my magnificently melanated TV episodes. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in my next video.